From TPN at Technophilespodcast.com, I'm Krista-Lee, and this is Sci-Fi Science.
Not only is everything in here frighteningly possible and plausible, but once you're finished reading it, it seems nearly inevitable.
In this episode, we discuss Ramez Naam's novel Nexus, the first book in his award-winning trilogy. It's time to tune our telepathic links, because this is Sci-Fi Science's first episode. Hello and welcome to the pilot episode of Sci-Fi Science. I'm your host, Krista-Lee, and joining me tonight is regular cast member Patrick Tomlinson. How are you today, Patrick?
I'm well.
And what have you been up to lately?
Well, I just got back from Confusion, which is a sci-fi and fantasy convention in Detroit, Michigan. So that was an awful lot of fun, heading to Detroit in the middle of January. That's new hot destination location, everybody. It's just a wonderful time.
I've heard great things. Like, it is the place to go, especially in January.
Mm-hmm. To get fresh water and...
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, Sci-Fi Conference, did you let everybody know that you're going to be doing this wonderful new show?
I did not. I was hammered the entire time. The start to finish, there was not one moment of sobriety that I experienced during that entire weekend.
So I kind of want to be mad at you, but then I'm like, he's a writer.
There's a lot of scotch that we drank, like just too much. Also, there was a tequila bottle with a scorpion in it.
Wow, that sounds awful.
Yeah, it was. It was tequila with a hint of nail polish remover. Is really how I would describe that entire culinary experience. But we had a really good time. The people who run Confusion are a lovely bunch of people, and they put on one of the most underappreciated smaller conventions anywhere in the country, really. I mean, they bring in just an incredible guest list of other authors and industry professionals. The ratio between the number of industry pros and just the normal attendees is so completely skewed compared to any other convention that fans might want to go to. They get just an incredible value for their money if they don't mind going to Detroit, Michigan in January.
Well, it sounds like it might have been worth it. So because this is the first episode and nobody knows either of us yet, frankly.
True.
Obviously, you're an author that's been mentioned. You were at this conference. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself? Like, what do you write? Why did I ask you to be here tonight?
Sure. My pen name is actually Patrick S. Tomlinson, just to make it sound more official, I guess.
Wait, what does the S stand for?
Sean.
Really?
Yep.
All right.
S-E-A-N, spelled correctly.
Very Irish.
Yeah, very Irish. My debut novel came out in the last couple of months with a publisher called Angry Robot Books out of Nottingham, England. It is a sci-fi murder mystery set on a generation ship called The Ark. The sequel to which is coming out in April, called Trident's Forge. All
right. Sounds good. Excellent. So that is why I asked Patrick to be on this show with me, because he is a professional writer. So for anyone who is a regular audience of Technophiles podcast or any of the other shows on our lovely network, you know that Technophiles is for fans by fans. And Sci-Fi Science is going to be very similar, with one little twist. In having the idea for this show, decided I wanted to try to bring in a little more expertise, basically. So I brought in the professional writer, and Patrick will be here with us each month. Later on down the road with some other books, depending on topic, I will try to bring in some other guests to join us. And for those of you wondering who perhaps have not seen the podcast, so haven't heard me promote myself, my specialty is technology, social media, and video games. I got my PhD in anthropology, and that has been the focus of my studies. So as you will very quickly learn in discussing science fiction, I'm going to talk a lot about how human cultures will adapt to different technologies. Patrick, I am hoping, can tell me a lot about how well things are written, different things the author did to put stories together. But I think that is enough about us, unless there's anything else you would like to plug.
No, that'll do it for now. Oh, I'm also a stand-up comedian, so this could turn into a dumpster fire really fast.
I have been told by many of my students that I am not funny. I like to tell jokes during class occasionally. I entertain myself and nobody else. So maybe you can balance me out. All right. So the idea behind this show, as you all can see, I have a book here. Each month we're going to look at a different book and talk about...
Might help to actually turn the
science
title page towards the camera. There we are.
Sorry.
Talk about... on the spine. So on the spine. There we go.
The spine's good. It has the name. You're covering the spine. The name. There we go. This month we're talking about Ramez Naam's Nexus, and we're going to be talking about the science of the book. We are going to keep the spoilers to a minimum. We'll try.
If we do come up with a major plot spoiler, we will tell you all earmuffs. A small icon will appear at the bottom, so you can fast forward through the however many seconds of that it is, and then resume play.
Yes. All right. So this book was published in 2012, and it is actually the first of a series that Naam has written. The second and third books are called Crux, which came out in 2013, and Apex, which came out in 2014. Now, to start, Patrick, why don't you give us a brief, spoiler-free synopsis of what this book is about so we know what we're talking about?
In the shortest amount of time possible, the Nexus trilogy is a near-term futurism exploration of the growth of... That was good.
Sorry, it's never a show unless I'm bashing the mic at some point.
Let's see. We'll just start over where I was. In the shortest number of words possible, the Nexus trilogy is a exploration of near-term futurism over the next several decades that really gets into the nitty-gritty of human-machine interfacing, especially at the neurological level. Nexus explores all sorts of different topics that goes far beyond just the actual tech involved, although it does that exceedingly well because Ramez himself used to work for Microsoft. But it also goes into religious, political, and even meditative aspects of the fallout from the introduction of this sort of technology and what it would mean for not only individuals but society as a whole. And it does it exceptionally well. In my opinion, it's this generation's William Gibson. It's like Neuromancer, except perhaps even more thoroughly realized, which I know is a big claim, but I believe it, and so do quite a few other people.
Well, one thing that really struck me is the technology that would make this book possible is minutes away. It really is.
That's in reading through it as I have and being as linked into a lot of the knowledge base that Ramez had drawn off from as well. I try to keep pretty regular. Being a sci-fi author, I try to keep up to date on developments in things like neurology and nanotech. Anything that's covered in this, and not only is everything in here frighteningly possible and plausible, but it's once you're finished reading it, it seems nearly inevitable in a lot of ways, which is why the books are just so compelling.
I definitely agree. So I'm going to bring in a little more detail here. I don't think this is quite earmuff territory, but I want to talk a little more about the main technology in Nexus. And go figure, it's called Nexus. The main protagonist is a graduate student named Caden Lane. And he is doing some experiments with Nexus, with an iteration that he's calling Nexus 5. And what makes Nexus interesting is it is referred to as both a drug and a technology. There seems to be within the character group of the book some disagreement on which one it is. And the reason why is because you have...
It's both. That's the reason why.
Right,
yeah,
basically.
It's absolutely both. The Nexus technology itself is nanotech. Mm-hmm. And the idea behind it is that it's either swallowed or injected or otherwise introduced into the body. And then through the bloodstream, it travels to the brain. Once in the brain, each small nanoparticle of Nexus then latches onto an individual neuron and keeps an eye on it and is able to fire and make it and interact with it as well as simply monitor it. Once all of those little nanites are in place, then they network with each other wirelessly to construct a computer. and once that's done, then you can use Nexus to wirelessly interface with other minds, and you can also use Nexus to control and influence the brain itself, either for good or for ill.
Right, and so I'm gonna pull out the anthro classes now. As was no surprise to me in this world, which actually is, I shouldn't say world, right? It's our world. It's just in 2040.
2050, somewhere around there. A little bit later than that, but still close enough.
Right. So it's our near future. I mean, we'll probably be alive.
We'll get there.
And so this is being treated like a controlled substance. They have an agency they call the Emerging Risks Directorate. And this is something like the DEA. They also still have the DEA. And they are...
And the Department of Homeland Security.
Right, and you still have all of those. So that these things all get mentioned because, of course, Nexus 5 is a controlled substance. And what you see is a lot of fear coming from the establishment, which is why you have like Homeland Security coming into this and the ERD and DEA coming into this. And at the same time, you have like the young grad student and his friends, and they have this very utopic vision of like, oh, look at these things that we can do with this, and it'll be wonderful and open our eyes.
Well, and when you're first introduced to Nexus in the opening chapters, it's being used as a party drug.
Right.
It's being used as a temporary party drug that allows you to directly interface with other people and experience what they're experiencing, hear their thoughts, share your thoughts with them, and then also to like tune in and have light shows beamed into your head during music. So imagine a laser light show where there's no restrictions on the sorts of images that are being pumped into your brain. That's where Nexus starts. And it also leads to the single most awkward sex scene I have ever read in anything. That was really tough to get through for me personally. But
no, it actually was. And I will say, for anyone else who might get turned off by gratuitous sex,
he got it out of the way right away. It doesn't really happen after that.
Well, not only that, but really not gratuitous. So for the first couple of paragraphs, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this is just gratuitous sex.
Exactly.
And this is how he's starting. And I'm thinking, why did Patrick recommend this book?
And then it goes completely off the rails. And because of the fact there's a bug in the coding of Nexus, that in one of the programs within Nexus that they are trying out. Because here you've got Caden Lang, who is not a particularly confident young man with the ladies, and so he programs something.
Well, he's a grad student in neuroscience.
I'm not faulting him. I'm just stating fact.
And that's when I got hate mail.
But he writes a program called Don Juan, which boosts his confidence and takes away all of his nervousness and feeds him lines to say to women that are kind of sort of pre-generated, I guess.
Yeah.
And it ends up with him hooking up with a girl at a party. Well, there's one of these parties where everybody's on Nexus, or not everybody, but a lot of people are on Nexus.
Right.
And then he tries to have sex with her consensually. But the program that is making him this great love machine goes totally off the rails. And it was a really awkward, funny, and interesting way to introduce the Nexus as a concept, and to show its capabilities, and to show that it's still totally in the beta release. Like they're still working out all the bugs in this thing, and still to give the reader a really pretty quick rundown on how it works and how it affects the brain and everything.
Yeah. And that's just it. Like if you
by the time you're done with that scene, you're like, oh, all right, I get this at a level that would have taken a really long time to explain otherwise.
Right, exactly. And that's why, so yes, in the first couple of paragraphs, I thought, oh, gratuitous sex. But by the end, I was like, that was genius.
Most sex is gratuitous, by the way. I'm just...
But this was not. I'm just saying. This was excellent. And not only that, but also...
In real life, if I only had sex every time it wasn't gratuitous, I would have had it like 3 times total. Like, most sex is just for the hell of it.
Okay, so I would have never had it. Anyways, approaching 40-year-old virgin. Now you made me lose my train of thought. Thanks a lot, Patrick. No, so what I was going to say is you have, a couple of young students, and we should mention Caden's friend is like helping with the testing of this Danwon software. So his friend is also aware of this. And let's think about this realistically. You have a couple of young grad students. The idea that their logic would go to, oh, we could write a dating program.
Immediately, not...
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. It's like, oh, we could use this to help autistic children, better integrate their sensory... No, we could use this to get laid. That is the second question that is ever asked of any new technology. Can it make killing less of a hassle? And will it help me get laid?
Yes, actually, yes. And especially for the age of these people, that was... It's in fitting with the characters. It's in fitting with what you would expect from this group. So there's a couple other things I want to bring in. And this was, I am a full-on fan of Ramez Naam now, because later on in the book, actually a good portion of the action in the book takes place in Thailand. Because our Caden Lane, our main guy, he's in America, but he goes there for a conference, an academic conference like grad students do. So he's in Thailand, which is awesome. I never got to go to Thailand for a conference. I just get to go to like...
Are we getting towards earmuffs or no? Just keep it in mind.
No, I don't think we are. Okay, because actually what I'm going to say, and the reason why I really like the author specifically here is because I think he did a phenomenal job of writing Thailand. So I'm going to go a little off the science here for a minute, but he's in Thailand, and some of the characters that you get introduced to, this guy did not seem to take random names for people. All right. So you have, for example, a young drug dealing grad student named Nurong Shinawatra. The Shinawatra family is a very rich Chinese Thai family. They have two people who'd been prime ministers of Thailand, Thaksin Shinawatra and Yingluck Shinawatra. And for those of you wondering, why does this girl know so much about Thailand? When I was living in Asia, I was very close to Thailand, and I vacationed there frequently. And when you talk to cabbies, they talk politics. So both of these people this brother and sister pair had very turbulent times in office. Thaksin was overthrown by a military coup, and Yingluck was removed from office because she was convicted of corruption. And so he's taking this name and using it for this drug dealer. There's two more, actually. So the other one is you're introduced to a monk and professor in Thailand. Not really a spoiler. His name is Somdet Phra Ananda. And Somdet Phra is a title in Thai. So even though it's not really explicitly said in the book, Somdet Phra is the highest rank of royal peerage, and Ananda is the name or one of the names of a previous king of Thailand. So I bring this up because you have this amazing book about this amazing technology, but he actually does a great job of bringing in the the humanities side here. And so he's tying these real names in. And because this is the real world, because this is just our future, I mean, this says to me that you're still going to have these same families that are going to be in charge. You're still going to have the same 1% in Thailand, which really seems very reasonable and believable to me. And I thought that was very important. It wasn't like he just fell down the science hole. He actually brought together the history, the social science, and the hard science. And I just thought that was beautiful.
Ramez travels an awful lot, so he speaks on authority and from personal experience from a very wide range of topics and subjects. He travels internationally doing speaking engagements for not only neuroscience but also clean energy and environmental causes and that sort of thing. There's hardly seems like a week goes by when he's not talking to the energy minister of Spain about some new solar project. I really, really hate this man.
By which he means
and I
he
hope
adores
you're watching
him.
this right now, Ramez. I've never liked you. Anyway,
he's jealous. Patrick's just really jealous. Yeah, I mean, I would be very surprised if I heard that Ramez had never been to Thailand, because as soon as even that very first moment where Caden is arriving in Thailand for this conference, and even the description of, getting off of the plane.
And the tut-tuts and how everything works.
Yes,
and
even just like hitting that humid air, how that feels. I mean, because it is very like oppressive, especially if you are from somewhere that is not like that, right? I'm from Wisconsin. When I was in Thailand, that was like, oh, I am going to die now.
I remember the first couple of nights that I spent living in Tampa, which is not as it's not as tropical and it's not as bad as Thailand, but that was like wearing a wet blanket for the first week. It was awful. But
oh, definitely. And I vacationed in Thailand. I was living in Taiwan. One way I've responded to people when they say, well, what was it like being so close to the tropics and in the tropics? And I said, well, I was wet for 3 years and then I came home and I've been cold ever since.
True.
Because now even in the summer I'm cold.
A couple other neat little things about the book, and the series really is that it is the winner of the Prometheus Award for 2013, I believe.
2014?
2014? Okay.
I'm looking at the back of the book.
Oh, well, yeah, now you're just cheating. It was also shortlisted for the Arthur C. Clarke Award, which is a major award, and just recently the final book in the trilogy, Apex, was nominated for the Philip K. Dick Award. So pretty high praise for this series of books. It is, and they are just wonderful. I really can't say enough about them. So, also, Angry Robot books, by the way. So,
I want to. I was kind of saving this because this might be an earmuff moment, and maybe we can have so if anyone doesn't want spoilers, now would be the time.
Earmuffs.
To just just back off for like a couple minutes. All right, are you awake? Do you got earmuffs on? Are we good? All right. Okay, so the final, or I guess it's not the final scene, but right toward the end, right? You have Caden and Sam, the ERD agent, in the monastery. And I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on this. I thought it was really interesting, the bringing together of religion and technology in a way that didn't make one or the other explode.
Right. Yeah, that there's this whole... Ramez goes into great lengths in the book on meditation in a way that makes it pretty obvious that he is intimately familiar with this. Not just meditation as a general thing, but the different disciplines of it, the different ways of achieving it. And it's something that Cade learns in order to quiet his own mind so that he's able to be more effective with using Nexus as a tool. And yeah, the religious aspects of it. And the way that he was able to merge them with the tech, and that these Buddhist monks were not seeing Nexus. We're seeing Nexus as a tool to get themselves closer to enlightenment instead of as either a crutch or as a threat. And it was a seamless integration. Which, if you'd asked me, how do you think that these religious authorities would approach technology like this? I would have thought they were going to cast it out. But in retrospect, after reading the book, it made a lot of sense that these people are trying to, to create more oneness with the universe and create more links between people could very well embrace a technology like this. Yeah.
So I think that I would have agreed with you where I would expect the religious authorities to go against the technology, but I think that also...
That it's the Buddhists in particular, I think, is why that was so appropriate, though.
Right, and actually that's what I was going to get to. I think the reason you and I both thought like that at first is because we are both from the West.
Yeah.
And I think it would take an Eastern religion to be able to be a little more accepting and see that. And that's one of the things, when I was in Asia, and I don't know if it was because of where I was living or not, but I definitely had more interactions with Buddhist monks while I was in Thailand than I did in Taiwan. But like I said, that could have been just neighborhood
location. Yeah.
Because I don't really know the exact stats. The feeling of acceptance and balance rather than, oh my God, this is evil, it must be cast out, which I feel is sometimes how Western religions tend to be. It's either good or bad. We have this
Western religions
struggle.
Tend to define themselves more by what is excluded from their borders.
Yeah.
In some ways. And this is coming from an outsider atheist perspective, but when especially now in the U.S., the way that the evangelical side of things has gone over the last 10 or 15 years, what are the things that spring to mind when you think of the church? You think, well, they're against women's rights, they're against gay marriage, they're against, it's an exclusionary list of things that they don't like. It's not what they embrace.
And I want to say that this is not, of course, all religions, and it's not all religious people.
It is all religions and all religious people.
Patrick is saying that, not me.
Now I get hate mail.
Good, we can both get hate
Yeah.
mail. That's okay. No press is bad press, right? All right.
Well,
no, but I think that is also kind of particular to American religion. It's been brought into politics. That has been divided.
Yeah. I would agree with that. The church. I say the church. I mean, churches, because there obviously isn't one, but the churches in an awful lot of European countries seem much less interested in getting themselves that involved with politics.
Right.
Yeah, and seem to worry more about their own flock rather than controlling the country.
Right. And when I've traveled in various places in Asia, I got asked a lot about why is there religion in politics in America? Like, this is strange. We don't understand. Why is this? Which is not to say it never happens elsewhere.
Right.
But the level to which it happens here was definitely strange by people. But the other thing I want to get to is, so this isn't just religion, right? So you also have the politics in the East of being a lot more accepting of this technology and of drugs.
Well, and what was cool about the political side of things was that there was not one response to the tech throughout the world. There was no consistency at all.
Right.
There was there you had the overreactive very conservative approach of the United States, which was just to ban it, make it a banned substance, start throwing people in jail, do everything we can to control the ins and outs of it. And then in Thailand, there was no regulation at all, or at least if there were, it was so laxly enforced that it was basically meaningless. There was this really great scene in one of the markets while they're walking around in Taiwan. They go to one of these kind
Thailand.
Thailand.
It's okay.
Where they go to one of these just a straight up black market filled with anything you can imagine.
Right, it's called Suk Chai.
Suk Chai, and there was just incredible visuals throughout that whole thing
Yeah.
of not just Nexus, but straight up body modification, like temporary glowing tattoos, new organs, limb regeneration, using biotechnology that maybe wasn't fully mature yet, that could lead to tumors and all sorts of other things. But you could anything you could get for a price there. If you wanted scales, they could give you scales. Just crazy stuff.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting when they had things like the limb regeneration. We'll just take that for an example. There's medical reason for that. If you have an accident and you lose a hand, if you have the technology and you can regrow it, why would you not want that? Now, yes, it's true, and they talk in the book how because some of these technologies are essentially like beta releases, but because they are illegal, then people can't do research into it. It's never going to get past that beta release, right? I mean, this all comes back to the very first.
And it's just like how just like the way stem cell research has happened here in the U.S.
Exactly.
We've been limited to just a handful of lines of stem cells, which is ridiculous because their stem cells are being thrown away as medical waste every single day in tens of thousands of clinics all across the country. It has never made any sense. And instead of those technologies being developed here in the U.S., they're just being developed in other countries, which are then going to take the lead on developing those kinds of medical innovations and reap the notoriety as well as the profit from those advances instead of us doing it here.
Right, and it would seem that if Nexus is a vision of where Ramez thinks the world is going, then that's definitely what he's writing. The U.S. is falling behind as other countries are taking the lead.
Like so many authors, and in almost every novel that gets written about the future, or in an awful lot of cases about the past as well, they're allegorical stories.
Right.
They're being told about today.
Right.
They're being told about the political conditions and the society that exists today, and they're commenting on it in a way that places enough of a barrier and enough of a buffer zone to make it easier for audiences to digest and consider the ideas that are being talked about. So, I can't speak for Ramez on this point exactly, but I think that the U.S. in this trilogy bears a striking resemblance to the U.S. as it exists right now, and I think he's probably making some very pointed observations and commentary on why that's not a beneficial thing in the long term. He's also very, very good at projecting out near term, not just with the tech, but he's probably singularly gifted at being able to make these kinds of predictions as far as where things are going in a larger context than just, well, how long is it going to take to make this device work?
Right.
It's like, well, what's what makes Nexus in the books that follow it so great is that the tech is just one small part of it. The books are spent, most of the time in the books is spent looking at the fallout to the culture and to individuals.
Yeah, so actually, because you mentioned this and remind me of one of the things I bookmarked in here. So throughout the book, there are these little briefings, and it's just a short paragraph or two. It's kind of in between chapters, and it basically is giving you a little brief history of something that happened before 2040.
Yep.
So this reminded me what you just said. There's this one briefing. I'm just going to read it quickly. It's attributed to Free Future, written in 2032. It says the Chandler Act, aka the Emerging Technological Threats Act of 2032.
Patriot Act.
Basically. Is the opening salvo in a new war on science. To understand the future course of this war, one need only look at the history of the war on drugs and the war on terror. Look at those two manufactured wars. This one will be never ending, freedom destroying, counterproductive, and ultimately understood to have caused far more damage than the supposed threat it was aimed at ever could have. So yeah, I mean, this one is very obvious because he's obviously looking
he's not
at...
trying to...
Yeah, he's not even trying to hide it. He's
it,
like,
no.
this government agency's in this book as response to technology is about as effective as the war on drugs and the war on terror, which whatever you may think of the war of drugs and
we're
the war
not
on
only failures, but we're counterproductive and actually metastasized both issues.
Right, exactly. And that's, I do want to say like that, whether there is success or failure has nothing to do with how one morally feels on the issues. I'm not saying, yes, let's let the terrorists and drug dealers run crazy. Right. That's not it. But, if you keep using the same tactic over and over again to solve a problem and it's not working, but you keep doing it, that's called insanity.
Thank you, Albert.
You're welcome. Do you have any other thoughts on the book? I think I've thrown out all of my big ones.
Final thoughts. Well, actually, because it does such a good job of going beyond just even the Nexus tech. A lot of the things that it talks about in the book and the subsequent books involve. There's a lot of discussion of military tech, near-term military tech. They expand on the use of drones and the likely technological breakthroughs that will happen with them in the near future. Some limited AI. It just does a really good job.
Before you go too far, if the other two books are going more into other technology, perhaps we should just save those thoughts and we'll cover the next two in another episode.
Sure, why not?
Okay, I just didn't want you to go too far out there. Okay. So,
Nexus is people. Sorry.
Nexus is not people. Nexus is tiny robots. And everybody likes robots, right?
Which are made of people.
They're not made of people. They're put into people. All right, yeah, so let's do that. We will do the next two books in sometime later on. I'm not sure yet. It won't be next month because next month we are going to be covering Ready Player One by Ernest Cline.
An immensely fun book.
It is. I absolutely love
an immensely fun, pointless, nostalgic book. So
it is not pointless. It is beautiful. It is beautiful. I'm definitely part of the target demographic there, so of course I'm going to find
we both are. Yeah, we both really are.
All right. Well, on that note, I am Krista-Lee Malone, and this has been Sci-Fi Science. I probably should have started with Patrick Tomlinson. If people would like to talk to you about politics and hate mail, where can they contact you?
You can find me on Twitter. My handle there is @StealthyGeek. You can also find me on my website, which is simply www.patrickstomlinson.com. Tomlinson has no H.
Okay, do people put H's in it sometimes?
Oh, all the time, yeah.
Okay. And I'm Krista-Lee Malone, and as you know from the podcast, you can find me on Twitter @GamerAnthro, and you can also occasionally find me blogging at kristaleemalone.blogspot.com. Yes, I still use Blogspot. Thank you. Everyone always asks.
WordPress does exist. You know that, right? It's an actual thing.
I know.
That exists in our world
and
today.
I have used WordPress. Let's not turn this into a blogging story. The microphone doesn't like me anymore. That's okay. So yes, you can find me at GamerAnthro on Twitter, and you can see this show and all the other lovely shows of the Technophiles Network, like the Technophiles podcast, Branching Dialogue, Tabletop Test Job, and the newscast. You can also see me in the newscast a couple weeks ago, and you can find all of that at www.technophiles.com. Thanks, and see you next month.
Bye-bye.